We are live, Maria. We're live, and welcome back, everybody, to the next episode of How Do You Solve a Problem with Maria Gareth. And what are we talking about this week, Maria? What are we talking about?
Abstracts. Abstracts are important. Abstracts are the thing people read. Abstracts sometimes make or break your paper.
What is an abstract, Maria? As an editor, as an expert journal manager, as someone who's worked for years with researchers around the world, as we both have, give us a quick definition of an abstract.
So it's very short text, usually just 300 words in length. Journals are often quite strict with the word limits that they impose on abstracts, where you have to summarize everything that happens within your paper. You have to tell people exactly why they should read your paper, why they should be interested, and what you did and what you found. So it is very important. It's displayed on search engines. Sometimes it's the only thing that people have access to whenever it's behind a paywall. The abstract is almost always available, and it is what editors go for to figure out if they want to give your paper the chance to be reviewed by actual reviewers.
Right, and so this is why we're doing this particular How Do You Solve a Problem event today, because we get lots of questions from researchers at SciTrain, on our LinkedIn, on our different social media channels about this particular piece of academic writing, because writing an abstract for a conference or for an article is really the most difficult bit of academic writing, because it's got to be standalone, right? Like, this is a piece, as Maria said, of writing 250, 300 words, depending on your journal, and it's got to encapsulate, which I know is a big word, go me, but it's got to have everything in it in order for other people to understand what you did. So Maria is an expert here. She works with researchers, helping them to manage the peer review process, get their papers published. Give us a few insights, Maria, from your experience. What makes an effective abstract?
So an effective abstract is as much as what you include in it as what you don't include in it. So you don't have to include details that are not relevant to the story, details that are not the key takeaway messages, and you need to include how you did your experiments, if this is a research paper, and what you found. That means that you have to have, even if this is an unstructured abstract, it needs to come in an order. So you need to start at the beginning and end at the end with everything in the middle in the correct order. So you need to tell people why it's important to do the study that you did and end with what you contributed to the field. In the middle, you have to tell them how you did the experiments and what your main findings were. So either they're qualitative or quantitative, you need to include some data in your abstract as well. Gareth?
So we're going to talk about this in our LinkedIn Live today. If you're listening to us on LinkedIn, give us a comment. Do put something in the comment box in the chat so we can get it here live in the feed. Or if you're listening to Maria and Gareth in the future, hi future Gareth, hi future Maria, your abstract has to be effective. This is something that researchers, editors, and peer reviewers often read. It's often the only part of your academic paper that editors and peer reviewers are going to read. And you know yourself, you're scanning lots of literature all the time, you're downloading lots of papers all the time. You're not going to have time to read everything published in your field. So people do read abstracts, especially editors, especially peer reviewers. This is often, as Maria said, the piece of writing, the piece of the article that you've just submitted to that leading journal that will decide whether or not your paper gets sent out for peer review or not. It's the only thing often that an editor's gonna read. So those first impressions, putting your abstract together, is crucial in scientific publishing. And Maria's going to expand on that. Why is it so important to make such a good first impression with your abstract, Maria?
So, first of all, first impressions are important in everywhere in life. You only have one chance to make a first impression. So, this text has to include everything that is important in the story that you're telling, and that is unique to the story that you're telling. So it has to be self-contained because people are not going to look elsewhere for it. So we cannot include any referencing, any citations to any references that are not readily available. It should be accurate. It should present the most important results. So whenever you read an abstract, you should immediately learn what the key takeaway message is. And that the function of the abstract is often to encourage people that are reading the abstract to want to read the remaining research paper. So this is what you're telling them that you found, so that they can further go in depth into your research and read the whole of the research paper, because this is what you want people to achieve, to be able to get curious, to know more of what you did.
It's a window into your research. And in a moment, we're going to lift the curtain. We're going to unveil the secret Scitrain trademark method for writing an effective abstract. I know you're listening to this for free. Usually we sell this for millions and millions of dollars. There's a secret method that we're going to give you in this event today, here live on LinkedIn, to help you to write an effective abstract. First impressions are crucial. As Maria just said, this short piece of text, 200 or 300 words, must be self-contained summary, a self-contained summary of the research itself. Maria.
So, yeah, most researchers and most scientists don't really know how to sell themselves. They're very bad at it. But you need to look at the abstract as an advertisement. So you don't want to be advertising false claims. So you need to be honest and precise, but you also need it to make it stand alone, because in search, like we said, whenever it's behind a paywall, it's usually whatever people have in a search engine, that is the only thing that they will be that will be accessible to them when they're looking for subject material. It needs to contain no technical jargon or very little technical jargon. Technical jargon are things that people will understand because they've been exposed to it for a long time. The only abbreviation that I can think of that is acceptable in medical abstracts is DNA, because everyone knows what DNA is, right? I think.
I think so. I mean, just give me a reminder. I mean, as a geologist, I'm not sure I do, but no, there are some abbreviations that everybody knows. PCR, DNA are two key medical research abbreviations. Of course, there are some that you'll use, but many you do not want to use. Your abstract has to be honest and precise, as Maria said, stands alone, no technical jargon, citing no references. It's crucial in the editorial decision-making process. So this is what you have to build in those 200 or 300 words for your studies. So readers get to see these three elements, right, Maria?
Yes, it's very important that you describe what your findings were. You don't just have to tell people, you have to exactly guide them through what you found, and then say why they are important. Explain to them why they are important, what they add to the knowledge that wasn't there before. And then always, but always include an example. Highlight why this is important in people's lives. It's not just it's important for the field, or it will advance knowledge, or it will get me the promotion that I want. It is why it is important for other people's lives that makes the impact of your paper stand out.
We're going to tell you in a moment, stay tuned, that patented, usually very expensive sidetrain method for writing an effective abstract. We're building up to that point in this LinkedIn Live event. Don't forget that you can share questions and comments, any feedback in the comments on the LinkedIn post. Just get in touch with us. We'd love to hear all about it. Here's the beginning of the really excellent, fantastic part of this presentation, because a well-written abstract, Maria, 200 words, 250 words, 300 words, depending on your target journal, really has to have a clear structure, and it's really got to answer 4 key questions, right?
Exactly. Hello? Hello?
Hello, I'm here. Can you hear me? Tell
Yes,
me
I
those
can hear
tell
you
me
now.
those 4 key questions, Maria. What are those
So,
4 questions? What are those 4 key questions?
so the first one is why. Why did this study need to be done? Not why you particularly did this study, is why it was necessary for the wider, broader society and what it brings. And then what did you do? What exactly, what were the steps that you took to answer the question that you found? And then what did you find when you took those steps? What were the main results? And at the end, which is something that a lot of people often forget, is how did your research advance the field? What was the contribution that this piece of work, made that wasn't there before? What is novel? What is unique? What implications does it have for the broader context?
We've spent a huge amount of time over the last decades analyzing academic research papers, and this is really the structure of a well-written research article. These 4 questions, not just the abstract, but the whole academic article. Why did the study need to be done? What did you do? That's the methods. What did you find? Of course, that's the results. And what did you conclude? Why is this work of big importance, of implication to the field? If you have those questions answered with your research in sequence and put them into your abstract, just write down 1 or 2 sentences for each of these questions and then delete the questions, you'll be well on the way to writing a fantastic abstract. It works for conferences, it works for research articles. I use it all the time. Very, very important. Let's talk about titles and keywords and then come back to the abstract again in a moment. Maria, how does this all tie together?
So, your abstract is usually in a search engine, right? So the first thing that you see when you are looking for material for your literature review, or when you're looking for answers in a search engine, is the title. So this needs to be an intriguing title. It needs to make you want to click and go further, to go to the next page, to explore more. Um, it's usually between the abstract, it's between the title and the keywords. So you need to choose your keywords wisely. Keywords are what define how your abstract appears when people search for subjects. So if something is standard in your research field, make sure that you write the correct sequence of words for which you want your paper to be searched for. So if you have the name of a disease, if you have the name of a technique, it's important to have those words in the correct order and to have the correct words to describe them. And then your abstract needs to be clear. needs to be crystal clear, needs to tell people what you're going to tell them later in the research article. So don't worry if you think that you're repeating yourself in the abstract from the remaining of your article. It's supposed to. You need to tell people what you're going to tell them later. This is what your abstract is there for.
Really, really important. And let's quickly talk about titles for a moment, Maria. Should I use the same keywords in the keywords section of my research submission as I put into the title? What should I do about keywords?
So some journals really want you to use the same keywords in the title and your suggested keywords, and others want you to not repeat them. Nowadays, it's better to have variations of the same concept in different ways, but a lot of the hard sciences will want you to have in the title and in your keywords the same concepts. So the same types of findings or disease model or model that you've used or the main question are quite standard definitions in the field. So it's good that you place those keywords, even if they are jargony, because they are within an expression and not standalone. You can incorporate them in a way that they're understandable in your abstract. Hello. So this is an abstract.
That's really cool. So now I have a clearer idea of what to put into the basis of my abstract and into the title and what I should use in the keywords. Can you talk me through this image, Maria? Like, what's going on here? Are these colors correspond to the 4 questions in our 4-question based trademarked sidetrain method for writing an effective abstract? Trademarked?
Yes. So this is a long time ago when I was doing research. I submitted an abstract to a conference.
Just a few years ago, I'm sure, right?
That's a few years ago. And this was an example I used because it was a successful abstract because it provided me with a prize, which is good. It's always good to have money to go to the conference that you want to go. So the blue thing, in the very beginning, is the background and setting for the work that was done. So it tells you why. The purple thing is the research model and the hypothesis. So this is a more concise objective. It tells you why, but it goes deeper. So within the 4 questions that we talked about, this is still answering the why, but it tells you a specific hypothesis. So it goes from broader to narrower. And then the green part is the methodology. It tells you what was done. And the bulk of the text, as you see here, the results are in yellow, because this is what a learned audience, which is what I was aiming for, wants to know. They want to know what is the main takeaway lesson, what you did. And the take home message, so why it's important, why it advances, is at the end. It's the pink. It's just a sentence. It's enough to tell people what it is that you're going to tell them. This whole thing couldn't be bigger than what you see there. This is the word limit that was imposed. So it is very, very important that you manage to keep everything, including results and p-values and all of those, within the confines of a very small text. Can't hear you. You're muted.
So if you're looking at this, take a screenshot, have a listen back to this later. This is... I'm not muted, I'm here. If you're listening to this and you can see this, have a look at this, because it's a great template for an effective abstract.
You're also in the airport.
Tell us about structured abstracts, Maria.
So that was an example of an unstructured abstract. So it was a whole paragraph and there were no breaks in it. So you had a logical
Did
flow
we
from
lose the
beginning
feed?
to end. No, no, no. You had a logical flow from beginning to end, and that was perfectly fine. A structured abstract will have headings that tell you that the background, sometimes like I had before, an objective, which is, for instance, in uh, this example, it's not in the background. It has a background, and then it has the objective and methodology together, and it will have different headings for different places in the abstract. So you begin with the background, why it's important, and why it's important to do this research, where you're doing this research. And this is incredibly, if you go one further, this is incredibly important whenever you have like recently you were discussing, whenever something is new but is not a novel methodology. Sometimes it's new just for the place where you've conducted the research, and that's what you have to highlight in the abstract. What is new? So this, you have the methodology and principal findings that follow the background. It tells you what was discovered right after this. So it tells you the main findings, and then the conclusions and significant, why it was important, why, what question did this answer. So in here it says that these results have important epidemiological implications, which is novel, which is unique, and which is telling editors that this is worthy of being sent to peer review. So this is what the abstract is trying to achieve with this structure.
We may have lost the connection a little bit there, everybody. Sorry about that if you did lose us for a moment. Maria talked about this abstract from her own work. Thank you for sharing that with us, Maria. It's an abstract that we've color coded that gives you the 4 questions and their answers in sequence. And in sequence is key. The structure of the abstract is absolutely key. What did you do? Why did you do it? What did you find and what did you conclude? And notice in this abstract from one of Maria's fantastic previous papers, the bulk of the text is in the results section with just small sentences at the top and at the bottom, concluding and setting the scene. Why did you do it? Very short. What did you do? What did you find? That's the yellow text in the middle of the abstract, and then the conclusions, the wider significance. And we've expanded this in this next series of slides: the background, the methodology and principal findings, and the conclusions and significance. If you get scared, as I always used to do, writing an abstract, it's a short, structured piece of writing. Base it around those 4 sentences. Right, Maria, we have that template. We're building a roadmap for researchers to help them with writing and publishing. Maria?
Yes, so this is a very good way to start preparing. Often abstracts, so abstracts that tell about your work, abstracts that are submitted to conferences and meetings, abstracts that will then be expanded into poster presentations or oral communications or a bigger, more in-depth research paper, often start the writing stage of any early career researcher. You often start with doing experiments and being very um, enthusiastic about the new results that you get, but then you need to figure out a way to effectively communicate those. That is as important as doing the experiments and getting the results.
So what we're aiming for at SciTrain, and if you haven't had a look at our website, do have a look at our website, sci-train.com. Fantastic researcher training. We're here to help with a roadmap for publication success. And in this event, we've talked about the abstract. But if you go on and have a look at the YouTube playlist that we have now 18 different half-an-hour episodes. That's 9 hours, Maria, 9 hours of me and you shouting at each other about different aspects of researcher training, preparation, selling yourself, the structure of writing, and how to be effective. Do you have some tips for our researcher listeners? What to do to start a research paper? How to get going, Maria?
Um, an abstract is a good idea, but the better idea is to start with the methods. Always start with the methods. They're easier to write, and you have your own protocols, which are a template, and you know what you did yourself. So write it out before you forget. Even if it's rough, even if you don't know exactly how to go about writing it, it's always a good idea to show somebody else as well before you submit your research paper or abstract. Show it to other people, have their input, have their opinion. uh, Tell them, ask them what they found from your abstract and whether or not it made them want to further explore what you're doing.
We started this series on LinkedIn. We do these events in order to help people, and we are trying our best to provide information from our experience as researchers, more or less successful. In my case, for sure, like not all that, but we are definitely here to help. So if you have questions, ask us, Maria and I, SciTrain. Always you can reach out to us here on LinkedIn, listening now or in the future. Hello, future Gareth. Get in touch with us, because this series of live events has been designed, has been built to answer questions that we get from researchers all the time. Maria, I think we're at the end of our time today. Thank you so much for joining us. We've done a great series now here on abstract writing. Thank you so much for your time, Maria. Have a great day. Enjoy the weekend.
Enjoy the weekend.
And
Safe
we'll be back
flight.
in 2 weeks to solve more problems with Maria and Gareth. Thank you for listening and take care.